My name's Connie Fusella. I am a certified psychic medium. I'm certified with both the Forever Family Foundation and the Helping Parents Heal organizations. I am a 3-time near-death experiencer.
Today's guest is psychic medium Connie Fusella. Connie is a certified psychic medium with a gift for bridging the gap between the physical and spiritual
He
realms.
said, it's not their time and it's not your time either. You have yet to become who you were meant to be. I looked down at the cards and the strangest thing happened. I got like this shock of electricity. It felt like going into the top of my head and it like went through my body.
Her fascinating journey began with conscious memories of spirit communication starting at the age of 4, followed by 3 spiritually transformative near-death experiences.
I remember getting wheeled into the hospital, and then the next thing you know, I find myself like in this big white rooms. I just saw this long being illuminating with light walking towards me, and they put this big book in my lap. And as I looked down at the book, the pages were glowing and all this light is emanating all over the place. And then the pages started to flip on their own. And I could see from the time I was born till the present day. And I saw all this imagery and people and places and events that took place.
And now for my conversation with Connie Fusella.
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was 0 chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF just happened.
Hi, today I'm speaking with Connie Fusella. She's a psychic medium. She's certified by Forever Family Foundation, and she's also had near-death experiences, and I've always seen her at the IONS conference. So welcome, Connie. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Thanks, Liz. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, do you want to introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about you, your book, your work?
Sure, great. Yeah, so my name is Connie Fusella. I am a certified psychic medium. I'm certified with both the Forever Family Foundation and the Helping Parents Heal organizations. I am a 3-time near-death experiencer. And so, yes, I presented at the IONS conference last year. And I also am a new author. My book, You Are So Beautiful, right over there, has won 2 awards in the categories of death and grief last year. And I'm also a spiritual teacher. I teach mediumship development classes and through my own practice in person, online. And I'm also an affiliated teacher with the Journey Within Spiritualist Church in New Jersey.
Oh, wonderful, Connie. Well, thank you. So I have so many questions, as I'm sure you're shocked to hear after being with me at Forever Family.
Right.
So when was your first experience you had that you're like, maybe I have mediumistic abilities?
Yeah, so I started having awareness at the young age of 4. So I saw spirit, and that came for me as an old man in my basement. I'm originally from upstate New York, so I used to follow my mom down to do laundry on Saturday mornings. And one day on the far corner of the room, I saw an old man there. So, of course, this terrified me. I didn't understand it. I saw him. Yeah. So I saw that old man, several times over the next few months. And, it baffled me. It scared me. I didn't know what was going on. And I kind of chalked it up as it maybe being, a figment of my imagination or a shadow and kind of left it at that. And then shortly after that, because spirit is so clever and they probably figured, oh my gosh, she didn't understand this. It's overwhelming. It frightened her. So I stopped seeing the old man. But shortly after that, I started hearing spirit. And for me, I actually thought my stuffed animal was talking to me. And I know that sounds crazy, but I had a little lion cub named Leah that I took everywhere with me. And all of a sudden, one day, I started hearing things. And, it would be simple things like when the phone would ring, I would hear, oh, that's, grandma, or that's Aunt Julia, or that's so-and-so. I was always right, on who was on the other end. But my favorite thing was when I played games, especially as a young kid when you played like match games where you turned over the matching cards. And I would put my hand over and I'd hear that one, that one. And so I'd, of course, flip it over and I was always winning because I had that voice telling me, which one to pick. So that, was very entertaining for me. But I started school. And as most children do, when they start using their right brain, right, for reading, writing, arithmetic, I stopped seeing and hearing, but I had the knowing. So that carried with me from that young age all the way up. But I never thought there was anything different about me. I didn't tell my parents about this or really talk to anybody about this. And then I kind of forgot about it. As I went through life, and went through my years, I forgot about it. And for me, I always say, if it's your calling, your soul's going to keep calling. And this led to 3 near-death experiences for me, which was really my soul, the universe, spirit, trying to wake me up to reclaim those natural gifts that I was born with, to become a psychic medium.
I'm going to have to ask you about your near-death experiences, but first, I'm going to be just left wondering till I ask you, that man that you saw, did you ever find out who he was?
Intuitively, I know he was not a relative of mine. I think, I feel like he belonged to the house. So he sort of came with whoever, lived in the house before that, like a relative. He felt like a grandfather, to me. I don't feel like he was, one of my people, so to speak. So.
Right. And you were so little. Were you scared?
I was. And my dad had invented this story where the old man was standing was in front of this door on the far corner of the room. And behind the door was the furnace room. And so my father had invented this story that there was a monster back there. And in Italian, it was called the Momo, right? So he would say, never open that door, never go back there. So of course you can imagine, I'm thinking, I saw the Momo. I was like, oh my God, this is real. So, that kind of went through my mind a little bit too. But, after I saw him a couple times, it almost became a game for me. Because I would go down the stairs and I'd look to see if he was there. If I'd see him, I'd wave, and he'd kind of wave back. And that was that. And I wasn't really afraid with him, but I still didn't understand it.
Right. Like, that's really funny. And then I assume your father invented the Momo to keep you safe from going in the furnace, not to like terrify you, just to clarify.
Yes, let's clarify that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So your NDEs, tell us first about your first one.
Yeah. So I had an allergic reaction to medication. And I was at work, and I was at my desk. I was a secretary. And
if you don't mind my asking, how old were you?
I was. Oh gosh, let's see. So I have to count on my fingers. So I was about 20.
Around
20.
Okay,
Yeah, about 20
so
years old.
You were an adult. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm so used to saying early 20s. I think it was 2021. And so I was at my desk, and it was, Monday after the weekend, and it was summertime. And so people were coming by my desk and like, wow, you got a lot of sun. And I was like, oh yeah, because I had been out that weekend in the sun, it was a beautiful weekend in the summer. But more and more people kept coming by and like, wow, you got really burnt. And I'm like, what are they talking about? So I get up and I go to get a cup of coffee in the break room, and everybody's like, wow, you had so much sun. I was like, what? So I go into the ladies' room to see, what's everybody talking about? And oh my gosh, I was beet red. And I was like, I lifted up my shirt, like I was all red on my, on my abdomen and all over my arms. And then I started having trouble breathing. So I was having allergic reaction. And the next thing you know, I was really having trouble getting air. One of my coworkers came in after me. She saw me there, called, for an ambulance. I got rushed to the hospital. And the next thing I remember is, I remember getting wheeled into the hospital. And then the next thing I find myself like in this big white room. There's no ceilings, floors, doors, windows, walls, anything, just this white expanse of space. And I'm sitting there with my legs crossed in front of me, and all of a sudden, this very tall, large being comes towards me. Now, I say being because I couldn't make out any features. I just saw this long being illuminating with light walking towards me. And they put this big book in my lap. And as I looked down at the book, the pages were glowing and all this light is emanating all over the place. And then the pages started to flip on their own. And I could see from the time I was born till the present day. And I saw all this imagery and people and places and events that took place. And along with that, the emotions that I felt during those times. So, of course, I come to, I was in a state of anaphylaxis and they medicated me to, make me okay. And I go home the next day and I told my mom about this cool dream that I had because I thought it was a dream. And I described, some of the places and images that I saw, and she verified everything. And a lot of it was like before I was even 2 years old. So I was having I saw very vivid, memories and details of like paintings on the wall or decor in the house or how people were dressed and things like that. So, yeah. So I know now I had a life review. So my first near-death experience was in the form of a life review.
Wow. And what did you think after that? I mean, did it change your worldview in any way?
Interestingly enough, it really didn't because I thought it was a dream. And I just chalked it up as that. Now, I, was born into a Catholic family. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. Nobody ever talked about psychics or mediums or, anything metaphysical. So I had no understanding of it, no frame of reference. So I really didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was a strange, cool dream.
Even when your mom verified it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have a lot more questions about your NDEs, but let's get to NDE number 2.
Sure. So with that one, it was a little bit more medically intense. I was working in New York City at the time, and I commuted one way, 2 hours on the train. It was horrible. And then I had to walk to Midtown Manhattan. And then one day as I was walking to work, it was like I wasn't feeling well. I had been taking some medication. I had allergies, sinus, all that going on. But I was really clammy and my heart was like racing and racing. And it was March. It was like a cool, brisk morning in March. I'm like, why am I so hot and clammy? I get to my office and my coworker looks at me and she's like, oh, you don't look good. And I'm like, I feel like I'm going to pass out. So she ran and got the manager. And thank goodness, they took one look at me and he called, they had like an on-call car service that was right there, ready and available. They wheeled me down in my office chair with the wheels and the elevator out, shoved me in the back of the town car. It took me to the hospital. That probably saved my life because if I had to wait for an ambulance to come through Midtown Manhattan traffic on, early morning, probably wouldn't have made it there and back. But I got to the hospital and again, I remember them wheeling me in. And I'm in a room with all emergency personnel and I hear all the, machines beeping and, they're putting the IV in me and doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, I see myself, I'm floating like right under the ceiling. And then I see all the medical personnel working on me, doing things. And then I see the doctor grab the defibrillator paddles and start shocking me. And I see my body like on the bed, on the stretcher. And it's like jumping, like I'm a rag doll, right? It's just like limp and just jumping off the table. And then the next thing you know is I hear this like white humming vibration sound. And I had heard that in the white space too, in the first NDE. But this one was a little bit more intense. And then all of a sudden I'm in a tunnel. And I described the tunnel as, if anybody's had an MRI, like that's what it felt to me, like that small and enclosed, but it kind of felt like a Disney ride, those virtual kind of rides where, you're going slow, but it feels like you're going fast. So I'm on my back, feet first, and I'm in this tunnel surrounded by white, and I feel loved. I feel safe. I actually feel excited. And this humming sound is getting louder and louder and louder as I get toward the end. And as I get toward the end, I reach what I call the glow, and my feet literally sink into it like it was jello. They sink in. And at that moment, it was like, whoop, it's like I got pulled back. And that's when the defibrillators worked and resuscitated me. But I had an allergic reaction to medication that led to ventricular tachycardiac arrest. So I did flatline. And they used the defibrillators to get me back. The doctors had no explanation for what happened to me because this was just a few years later. So I was like 24, 25, and healthy, no heart issues. And so I stayed in the hospital for, about a week while they ran all sorts of tests, and they couldn't come up with any reason why my heart would suddenly go into this fast rhythm. And it wasn't until like over 10 years later, and randomly, I came across an article about this drug. It was for allergies. It was called Seldane, that I had been taking. And they found that when it was mixed with erythromycin, which I was also taking, caused, the rapid heart issues and potential, fatality. So, so I was really, really fortunate.
I'm glad you're here. God, oh, that sounds terrifying. Or, I guess, you got to have a near-death experience. So, and from what I hear, it's not scary when you're having the experience. But, I'm glad you're okay. And now your third NDE.
Yeah. So, well, interestingly enough, after the second NDE, I started getting pulled, toward the metaphysical world. And one day, a few weeks after I went back to work, I came across a psychic shop randomly, and I had no idea what that was. So I went inside, and the guy at the front desk was like, "Oh yeah, they predict the future, tell your fortune." I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to do this." So I went in and I had a reading, and I was hooked. I just was very much drawn to this, and didn't really understand why. But I also was having experiences since the second NDE. And what was happening is once I was on the train or a subway or on the bus, whenever I was near somebody, I started getting little visions, or I'd hear a name, or I'd get an impression. And I started asking questions because without trying to sound like too much of a weirdo, right? Like, and kind of like, "Oh, do you know the name Frank?" And then, the person would say, "Oh, that's my name," or "That's my dad's name. He's passed." It's like trying to say things gently, but it was just happening so often. I'm like, what is going on? So I thought that I would buy some tarot cards, and that since something was going on with me, maybe I had some sort of ability, again, forgetting that again, still not realizing as a young child, I saw and heard spirit, right? Because I'm not putting any of this together. I'm just thinking, I didn't even realize the second NDE was an NDE. Again, I just thought, I had this strange thing happen to me. So I get the cards, and I look at them, and I can't do anything with them. Nothing resonates with me. I read the meanings, and I get very frustrated with them. So they went in the bottom of a jewelry box, like a storage chest thing that I had, and they stayed there for over 10 years. So we fast forward about 10 years later. I had a reaction post-surgery and medication. And the next thing you know is I find myself in these big rolling clouds. And then the clouds sort of part, and then I'm in this very like green meadow with beautiful flowers, and these little children come towards me and they grab my hand, and we start singing like a song like, Ring Around the Rosie, where we're dancing in a circle. But we were singing a song that I did not learn on the earth plane. It was in a language I didn't know, but yet I knew it. Okay. And so I was so happy and joyful and dancing with these children. And then all of a sudden they stopped. and they parted on either side of me, and they're looking like, ahead. And I follow their gaze and I see this man walking towards me. And as he comes closer, I recognize him because I was raised Catholic. To me, he looks like Jesus. And he says to me, do you like it here? And I said, oh, I love it here. But then I realized, like, somehow, as I looked around, I was like, but where are my children? Because I had two young boys under the age of 6. And he said, well, it's not their time yet. And I was like, okay. So the kids grabbed my hand again and we started singing and dancing and going on and on. They stop again and Jesus looks at me. And the one thing about the way that he looked at me was just so intense. And the way that I describe it is that he didn't look at me. He didn't look through me. The way that he looked at me, it's like he knew everything about me. I felt so loved and so accepted, and just like he knew me inside and out. And his eyes were incredible. They were like the ocean. They were changing like gold and brown and teal and green and blue. And they kept turning colors. It was just so mesmerizing. So he asked me again if I liked it there. And again, I said, I love it here. But where are my children? And he said, it's not their time and it's not your time either. You have yet to become who you were meant to be. And with that, I woke up thinking again, I had another cool dream and wondering, like, what a strange dream. Like, who am I supposed to be? What does that mean? Right? So, yeah.
All amazing. I just want to back up a second and ask you, you said you were first getting those names and then you'd ask the people randomly to verify. Mm-hmm. How were you getting the names? Were you hearing them in voices, seeing them? How were you getting that input?
I was hearing them. I just knew it sometimes. And then I was getting little visions of stuff. Like sometimes I'd see like a restaurant name or a street name or, a vision of something like a school or a school teacher, like, symbol. And I started asking questions like, and I had to be like, I don't want to look like a real weirdo, so I had to be real clever about it. Like if I'd see a restaurant like, Tony's restaurant or something, I'd say, oh, do you know where Tony's restaurant is? I heard that it's good. And then they'd say, oh, that's my family's restaurant. Or, like there'd be some weird connection. I had to kind of cleverly find ways to say stuff because, what was I didn't know anything about psychics, mediums. I didn't even know what to say, but I knew something was going on. I just didn't understand what.
Fascinating. My God. Oh, so I just want to ask you more though now about your NDEs. Like,
yeah.
How did they feel sensorially? Like, did they feel as real as you sitting here? Like, the way?
Yeah, they did. They were like, and to me, like I said, I just felt like they were very vivid dreams, like so lifelike, so real. And again, even after the third one, I still thought it was a dream. I didn't realize till I started doing this work, that what I looked like, oh my God, I've had 3 near-death experiences. Like I just had no idea, because I didn't have any frame of reference.
Right. And did they feel realer than here, the way some near-death experiencers tend to say?
I would say it's about the same. It was, I was in the moment. I was there. It was as real as it could be. So yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, but very real.
Do you have any after effects? I mean, aside from being a psychic medium, but like electronics, all this stuff.
I know a lot of you have heard me talk about the Forever Family Foundation. They were absolutely instrumental in helping my grief and in changing my view of the probability of an afterlife. They use science-based testing to certify psychic mediums, have a scientific advisory board, and they host grief retreats. They will be hosting a special grief retreat this October in California, only for parents who have lost a child. The founders, Fran and Bob Ginsberg, who have become like parents to me, although Fran sadly passed in 2020, started the foundation after the passing of their daughter, Bailey, so helping grieving parents is dear to their hearts.
This retreat will have psychic mediums and speakers. While they host many grief retreats during the year, having been through it themselves, they understand the unique type of grief and the safe environment needed for those who have lost a child. For more information and to sign up, go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org. I'll also have the link to this retreat in the show notes. Do you have any after effects? I mean, aside from being a psychic medium, but like electronics, all this stuff. Like how, in what ways were you changed?
I wish I had electronics, but as I share with you, I am a professed technical idiot. That is my downfall. Okay. So after my first near-death experience, I started having sleep paralysis quite a bit. And that's like, if anybody doesn't know, it's where you're kind of frozen in bed between the sleeping and waking state. And it can be like terrifying because you can't move. And sometimes you feel scared and you want to scream out for help and you can't talk, you can't do anything. And this kept happening to me over and over again. But the strange thing about it is that it was always in the same format. And that as I was laying there, all of a sudden, I would see myself come out of my body in spirit form and try to lift myself up off the bed. And then I'd have that vibration noise humming again, and I'd hear this voice saying, you need to raise yourself up. You need to raise yourself up. So I came out of it and then I'd say, yeah, I need to raise myself up. I can't move, right? I'm thinking, well, what a stupid thing for me to hear, right? So of course, again, not understanding, really now I know it was literally, again, my soul, the universe, spirit guides, whoever telling me, you need to raise yourself up, meaning my vibration. I mean, they were literally telling me what I needed to do to communicate with the other side. But again, the message went undelivered because I had no idea. And so that was like an after effect of it trying to wake me up. And then the second one, I started having the visions and hearing again. And then the third one, what happened after that is when I was wondering, who am I supposed to be? What's going on here? About a few weeks afterwards, I randomly get this call from this lady who was organizing a psychic fair in South Florida. And she told me that she had a few cancellations, so she was short. I don't know how she got my name, my number, and she wanted to know if I could be a tarot card reader. Now, I never did a tarot card reading in my life. So I was like, okay, hold on a second. I go running into my bedroom. Mind you, probably moved 4 or 5 times by this point in the last 10 years, but I still had that storage box of, oddities in there. And I open it up and those tarot cards that I bought in 1991 are still there. So I go back to the phone and I agree and I accept that I'm going to do this psychic fair. So she's all happy. I agree. This is like on a Thursday. The fair is on Saturday. Saturday morning rolls around and then reality finally hits me. And I start panicking. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm saying to myself, what in the heck am I thinking? How am I going to go read tarot cards? I've never done a reading. I don't know what those tarot cards mean. I never looked at them since over 10 years ago. So I start panicking, but anybody that knows me, and you probably know this from the Forever Family Foundation, if you call me, I will be there, right? And I don't back out. So that's, people know me. I'm true to my name. My name is Constance, which means loyal, right? And trusted. So I wasn't going to leave this lady hanging. But what I thought I'd do is I'd show up and apologize and tell her I can't do the readings, but I'll help check people in. I'll serve food. I'll do something, right? I'll help you. So that was my plan. So I get there. And she, greets me. She's all flustered and she's dragging me across, this big, room to the end. And she sits me down at the chair of a little table. And she goes, this is where you're going to read, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, I said, I have to tell you, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I said, I've never done a reading. And she just looked at me and she was not having it. Okay. So I was kind of scared of her. So I was like, oh, she's like, no, you have to read. And I was like, okay. I'll do it. So I sat there And I just prayed that no one would come in and get a reading from me. And about 20 minutes later, a lady shows up, and she's in her probably mid 50s or so. And she shows up and she wants a reading. And I start getting those cards out. And if you've ever pulled out like a new deck from the sleeve, it's like really hard, right? It's still like, yeah, stiff. So she's already kind of rolling her eyes a little bit. And so I start making small talk because I'm really nervous. And so I say to her, "Oh, is this your first reading?" And she's like, "Oh, no, I've been doing this for years. My family has gone to psychics forever. So this only further like just makes me so stressed out." So I'm sweating, I'm nauseous. I just start putting down these cards randomly. I don't know what I'm doing. And I realized I had this big circle of cards, like just kept going. And then I had all the space in the middle. So I start throwing more cards. Well, I used all 76 cards without saying a word. And so I had no more cards. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you ever going to say anything?" So I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God."
No.
So I looked down at the cards and the strangest thing happened. I got like this shock of electricity. It felt like going into the top of my head, and it like went through my body. And I looked down at the cards and I had all these messy piles. I had made a circle of 12 and I had 3 in the middle. And I just looked at the cards and these pictures, how they, all joined together. And I started talking and I asked her, I said, "I see something about a family secret that, got revealed. It's tied to having to do with somebody that passed. And then I see like communication from a legal person, like a lawyer and all these legal documents. And then there's like a trip overseas. And then I saw all this money coming to this lady, like a lot of money." And I said, "Does any of this make any sense to you?" And she told me that just a few weeks earlier, she found out that she was adopted because her biological father had passed away and he lived in Europe, and his attorney had contacted her and told her that she was the sole heir to his fortune. There was a lot of money and she was traveling in a couple of weeks to go claim her inheritance. So I was like spot on with everything that I told her. And so I continued. She's like, "Well, what else? What else?" So I started to say more things, which she verified. And then at the end, she told me it was one of the best readings she ever had. So she left a happy customer and I ran to the bathroom and threw up. And that is literally how I started reading.
Oh my God. And like, what were the sensations of the information coming in? Were you hearing it voices?
I was hearing it. I knew it. I felt it. I saw it. It was like everything was coming at me. And I was terrified because I had no idea. Like she left and, when I'm overwhelmed because what was that weird thing that like shot through me? And how would I know these things just looking at these random piles that I threw in this strange way? Like nothing was making sense to me. And I was frightened actually, it was just a lot to process. So I was truly overwhelmed. I had a couple more readings. I kind of, I got through them in the same way. And I got home and I just was like, what in the heck? What is going on? But that's how I started. And I started reading for family and friends and psychic fairs and kind of, honing in like what cards mean what. So to this day, I use the same exact deck that I bought in 1991. It's very worn. I use the original deck and I read the same way. To this day, I couldn't tell you the true meanings of the tarot cards, but it's just everything with me is with my spirit team working with me, so that's who I was meant to be. So that little mystery kind of cleared up. But what I didn't realize is as I started doing the readings more and more, I was hearing names. And when I said the names, it was the people of those that were passed. And then I started getting information. And then a friend of mine, I still didn't understand what was going on with me. And a friend of mine said, "I think you may be a medium." And I was like, "What's a medium?" Again, I had no reference. I was just doing what I did, and that was it. That's all I knew. Don't ask me about horoscopes. Don't ask me about astrology. Don't ask me about crystals. Don't ask me about, anything. I just looked at the cards and said what came, and that was it. That's all I knew.
Well, and do you ever find out how that woman got your information in the first place?
No.
And you weren't listed anywhere, like
No, I never did a reading. No.
That's like one of the weirdest parts of the whole, the whole story is pretty weird. But
Very
that's
bizarre.
like, wow. And you don't know her to this day to ever ask her?
No, it was so long ago. Like I forgot about it. I mean, I don't even have, I never kept her information. It was like a one-time thing. And I kind of like, through those years, is where I was doing a lot of soul progression. And a lot of work. So I would do some readings, and then there'd be like months and even maybe years where I wasn't doing anything because I was not in the right place to be able to do this type of work. And there was a lot of things I had to learn. And that's a lot what I talk about. I use my story in my book to show how I progressed through these different levels of soul progression, because I had to get back to what my soul's true destiny was, which was really to become a medium. But there was a lot of work I needed to do. And that's what I was doing over those 10 years. And then really it wasn't, and, then I started doing some mediumship readings and taking classes. And it really wasn't until, and I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell people I was a medium. I was doing, I had a full-time job. I was just doing it on the side, and I was getting really good feedback, but I never really talked about it because I don't know. I didn't believe it. It's like I didn't have enough faith in myself. And again, this was part of my healing journey, that part of it, the low self-esteem and things that I had to overcome in my life. Okay. And it wasn't until I became certified with the Forever Family Foundation. I'll never forget. I got the email and I cried. I was like, yes, you are a medium. It's true. Like, I can believe it now. Like, I just needed that validation, even though, like I said, my clients were giving it to me, but it was like that little nudge that I needed to just kind of break me out of my shell. And it was really from that moment on, Liz, that like when people would ask me, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a medium. Like I hadn't really said it before. So I was a closet medium.
Yeah. And there's also so much stigma. It's, sometimes people will be like, what's your book about? I'm like kind of psychology and grief and neuroscience of spirituality. You got to get over it. But unfortunately, and hopefully that'll change at some point.
Yeah, and that happened to me. I didn't live in an area, where I was part of like a spiritualist church or a group like that at the time. And when I would mention it or mention the cards, I'd get a lot of, people thought you were weird or they believed it was the devil's work. I heard it all, so this was very discouraging, and it also kept me kind of quiet about it, right? And but I'm telling you, once I had that certification, it was like, you know what, enough is enough. And it was kind of, it gave me permission really to say, I am who I am, and this is who I was meant to be. So, it was like the universe was like, get on with it, Connie, do what you're supposed to be doing, enough of this.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, so you were saying at first, you didn't realize it was mediumship. So you thought it was psychic. So I just want to let our listeners know, if they haven't heard this, there's a difference. Psychic is when you're communicating with, the energy of living people, their future, what's going on in their lives, and mediumship's when you're communicating with the other side. So now, how do you experience the difference between the two?
Well, as a medium, it's a two-way conversation. So, it's, and when I teach, mediumship development, I tell them it's one thing just to hear or see or stuff, but you've got to be able to go back to that person and say, I don't understand that. Give me something clearer, or, and really have a personal relationship. You're partnering with spirit because you're really of service to spirit and your client, right? So you really have to kind of, think of it as if they were right here in front of you and you want to get to know them. Like, tell me who you are. What was your name? How did you pass? Did you have children? What did you do? So you've got to be able to have that two-way communication to have that bridge.
And psychic doesn't feel like a two-way communication, or
No, psychic is just like it's just, to me, it's like, like a knowing. Now, so as you know, all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. So when you have somebody telling you this information because you're having that two-way communication. But when I do a reading, like if I'm doing a psychic tarot card reading, because I'm a medium, people will come through. It just happens. It happens often. I don't control it. They want to come, they're going to come. Right. So yeah. So sometimes if I'm doing, people want a tarot card reading, and I always ask, if somebody comes through, are you open to hear from them? Because they didn't purchase a medium reading. So I always want to make sure it's okay. Yeah.
Also, one thing, and I remember this in my reading with you, and you've mentioned it, you get animals a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know people a lot will ask if I know someone good who reads animals. So yeah, first of all, your shout out about that. But what is it like getting animals? Does it feel different than getting humans?
Hey everyone. I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality.
What is it like getting animals? Does it feel different than getting humans?
It feels the same to me, really, because the animals are part of the evidence of who that person was. So and especially if they didn't have children, a lot of them have animals. So you bring through the animals, it's very highly evidential. But they'll come through in the same ways. I'll hear their names. I'll hear, how they passed. I'll, maybe see a favorite toy or, things they like to do or, so they come through. I'm partial to dogs because I've been a dog rescuer all my life. I have two right now. And so the dogs usually come for me. And a lot of the times I'll get a pet first. And then, I kind of let them lead me like, well, who are you with? And a lot of people don't understand, like with the pets, yes, the rainbow bridge and all that, but really they wait for you. And they wait, to me, the way that I see it is they wait with your relatives that are there. So if your mom's passed and it's your dog, I see the dog with your mom waiting, that type of thing. So
this is such a random question, but I remember when my dog was passing, well, first I told her to go join the cat because they were like twins. But I also was like, go to your birth family. Like, are there birth families waiting for them? Is that ever anything?
There are. I'm sure it's just like, with us, and we're connected by those, invisible strings of light, and that, we recognize our soul groups and our soul families. I'm sure it's similar, with animals.
Yeah, because I kind of got comforted. My cat was there. My dad was there.
Right.
But I also was like, maybe, I assume her birth family was there, and then like the rest of her litter,
Yes,
so I sort of got comfort that she'd be with all of them.
I do believe they all go together. Anybody they interacted, like I said, again, it's the same principle, the threads of light that connect them.
So I'm going to get a little bit to your story again. So you had that total what the fuck with the tarot, and you were starting to become a medium. When did you start really doing it professionally? You kind of gave an overview, but when did it start really kicking
Well,
in?
I would say probably about 10 years ago, but again, not really advertising it. It was, secondhand to my full-time job. So I would say, about 4 years ago was when I really started heavily doing it. And, 30 readings a week plus events, plus my full-time job. So that was quite a bit.
A lot.
Yeah. And I did that for several years. And then finally last January is when I left my other corporate job and I dedicated myself to doing this full time. So now this is it. This is what I was meant to do. So got to trust the universe on that.
Are there any experiences you've had as a medium that you want to share that were just like you would call the most evidential that you've ever had?
I think, I always say like every reading I learn from it because, we all have our set of symbols or codes or keys that we work with spirit, but they'll continue to add new ones. So I'm always amazed at the intellect of spirit and their cleverness. Like, I'll see something and it was like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But the thing that I remember that kind of startled me a bit is, when I first started doing it and a couple had come to me for a reading and I was bringing, through this highly evidential information about trips that were taken and describing a room and names and all this other kind of stuff. And then afterwards, they told me, and I knew this person was younger that passed, but they told me that the person was an infant, like a year and a half old, okay, that was nonverbal. And it amazed me to think about the reading and all the stuff I was able to bring through that this came from a nonverbal infant when I was there. And I was like, wow, because it really just hit home, right? That this is soul to soul communication, that the soul is ageless, right? It doesn't think of it as an infant or an older person. And it just really, I think, all came together for me. It blew my mind just realizing that, like, this is unbelievable that I got that kind of information out of an infant. Because, it wouldn't happen if they were sitting right here. I wouldn't be able to have that kind of conversation. So that kind of really, like, made everything come full circle and really understanding everything.
Have you ever gotten any signs from your loved ones that have blown you away?
Absolutely. So one of the key chapters in my book is I started seeing the 444 symbol. And it happened one night when I was going to visit our oldest son up in Jacksonville. He was getting an academic award. And so I took the trip with my dad because my dad came from Italy. He had a fourth grade education. This was his oldest and first grandchild going to college, and he's never saw a college campus, right? So I thought it'd be, wow, what a great experience. So that night in the hotel room before the event the next day, I woke up and I looked over at the clock and it was 444. And I thought, well, that's strange, just for a second. Oh, okay. But what happened is I started seeing that number like crazy for 2 years in the strangest ways, in the most random ways, like in my face, like undeniable. And I started journaling it. And so then I thought, okay, well, what does this mean? Now I know it's an angel number and it means something about you're on the right path, you're protected, by angels. And so I'm thinking that's great because I was just starting to get into the mediumship and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good. Okay. But intuitively, I knew it had something to do with my dad because it happened I just knew I was with him. I don't know. I just knew it had something to do with him. So I wrote down, okay, 444. 4 means April, the month of April. And then I added the 444, that's 12. So I wrote down in the journal, what is April 12th? There's something about April 12th. And my dad passed 2 years later on April 12th.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I got serious chills over that.
Yeah. And then after he passed, and still to this day, I continue to get the 444 from him. And even at the last Forever Family retreat, when I was doing the demonstration, there was a lady in the front row, and she went to go get something in her pocketbook or something, and her phone flipped out and fell, and it was right at my feet because she was in the front row, and the back of her phone case had 444 on it. And in fact, Melissa Gould was there, and she read my book, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, "Can you believe this?"
My God. And it's like, even the fact it fell, that's one of those like psychokinesis
just
PK.
fell right at my feet. Like,
oh my God.
yeah.
Wow. Oh my, oh. Well, I would ask you, like when we first met, and I didn't find out until a few years later that was you. I didn't make the association, but we were in a spoon bending workshop together with Lloyd Arbach before you were certified with Forever Family, when you were a guest. And this story is actually in my second book, and it verifies that I was the only non-medium there, and I couldn't bend all the spoons and forks that you could. But what did it feel like to bend a spoon? I'm curious how much it parallels the one time I did it.
It was so strange. And so, yeah, that's how I found out about the Forever Family Foundation. A friend of mine was attending. She told me about it, so I went with her. And so, yeah, we go to this thing, and I don't know what it was. It was like the spoons just like melted. I was like twisting one after another. And it was so funny because afterwards, when we were eating, I probably shouldn't say this, but we were at the table. And so I said, "Do you think it like had something to do with like the make of the, spoons themselves, like, is there something?" So she said, "Well, why don't you bend the spoon right here?" And I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay, let me do." So like, under the table, we didn't want, of course, the staff to see them bending their spoons, right? And I did it. It was like, boom. She's like, "This is crazy." I said, "I know. I mean, who would have thought?" I don't know what. It was the strangest thing. It's almost like, this energy kind of flows through you and goes like into the spoon. It was the wildest thing. I left with this big bag. I think I had like 30 spoons in there that I bent.
Oh my God. Yeah, the way you described it, it felt like energy shoot through me in this intense heat. But just as you said, maybe could it have been the brands of the spoon? Was it the spoon? Again, if our listeners didn't get this, I tried to bend the exact same spoons and then was handing them to you and to Janet Mayer and to all the mediums in the room. And all you guys were just like trading them like they were like a pipe wire or something. Remember those like arts and crafts pipe wires from we were little kids that you'd bend around? It was like nothing. And for me, I was like, I couldn't bend it at all. And I was really trying. So that was so
it's
evidential.
Interesting, with the energy of mediums, because if you remember when we did the table tipping? And I had never done that before.
This is going to be in my third book. I was actually asked to leave because they said skeptics were interfering with it. And then I came back and all this weird stuff happened. And
I had never done that before. And quite honestly, I don't know if I really believed in it. I'm not into the physical medium stuff. I just never, it just wasn't my thing. So I wasn't sure, but it was so interesting that when 4 mediums were doing it, it was so strong. And and then once other people started to be added into the mix, and like it was 1 medium or 2 mediums, it was weaker. But with 4 mediums, it was the strongest. So I thought that was really interesting.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. The energy factor is really, it's real.
And I actually read an article after, again, I'll go in my third book so everyone can learn more about the details of this eventually. But, every time I was in the room, it stopped working until that weird experience at the end when I came back. But, I read an article that skepticism absolutely interferes with table tipping. Apparently, you can't have
Well,
skeptics
yeah, it's
in the
the
room.
vibration because we're believing, we're high, we're, and then it's like, oh, here comes a skeptic.
That's apparently what happened. Yes. How did that feel? I mean, there was no way it would have been idiomatic motor movements, right? Like I asked Joe that's too, and he
No,
said no.
and I'm telling you, I am a skeptic. I was a skeptic about that. I was kind of thinking like, oh, this is just for fun. This is going to be like a fun thing. This isn't real. But I was like, I could feel it, and I could feel the table, like where I had my hands. It almost felt like the wood was swelling. I guess is how I would describe it, like trying to expand, like swell, like I could feel it, expanding under, my hands. It was really interesting.
And when I went down, the table was really moving fast.
Yeah, it
The
was
time it
really
finally
rocking. Yeah.
worked when I was in the room. Yeah. And I know this medium, Dave Campbell, who was there, he had participated in a study with Windbridge on table tipping. And, Dr.
Oh,
Julie Beischel's protocols are tough. So, and it
right,
worked. So
right.
I'm pretty convinced. I'm curious now for people who are in grief and want to connect with their loved ones on their own. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, sure. And I actually teach a class on that called Speaking with Spirit. But it is about your vibration, and that's probably the number one question that I get, especially with people that have passed, recently, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know why I can't feel my loved one," and that, of course, furthers their grief, right, and their sadness. But the way that you connect, with the spirit realm is through a high vibration, raising your vibration. So if you can't quiet your mind and sitting still and just trying to relax and do that to meditate or connect, a lot of people can't do that. I can't do that. I am not a big meditator, okay, because I'm too just all the time on the go 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 go. I would say do things that bring you joy, whether it's listening to music, whether it's walking in nature, or if you have photos and memories of your loved one and you look at them and they bring a smile to your face and you feel that love, that's going to lift your vibration. But you've got to figure out what you can do that's kind of brings you to a happy and joyful place to lift your vibration to feel them around. And a lot of the times, they are around. They're definitely around. They're always around. They're going to give you signs and messages. But I always say, my tip on that too is, don't make it too crazy. Like put out, what you want from them. They'll usually give it to you, but it's going to happen in their time, right? Not like, okay, I want this message. I'm going to see it within 15 minutes, right? It'll come. It'll probably come when you least expect it. But I say, don't make it crazy. I want to see a pink pony with white cowboy boots, and, sparkles wearing a tutu, that sings, I mean, the chances of seeing that are
I do stuff
rare.
like that.
So, I mean, if you get it, more power to you. That's awesome. But, they do the best that they can too. And then also remember, don't put too many parameters on it. Like I was doing this, like I asked, and it's so funny, I asked to see a balloon. And in my mind, I thought about the hot air balloons. And I said to, I was asking my parents for it. And I said to them, well, I haven't seen any hot air balloons where I live around here, so I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on you. I said, but if you can show me a red balloon, like a regular red balloon, I'll be okay with that. And then like a week later, I opened up my laptop and you know how like the pictures always change? Well, when I opened it up, it was full of hot air balloons.
Weird.
So don't always think like, oh, you got to be out now looking in the sky. It could come on your laptop. It could come on the phone. You could be scrolling through something randomly. It could be on a t-shirt. It could be on a stuffed animal, right? It could be live. It could come in many different ways. So don't limit the way you're looking, for receiving those signs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And what I find interesting, and this is a bit of a shout out to you too, is I have a special sign with my dad, and I don't ever say what it is, but for years, mediums weren't getting it. And I was so upset. And then it came out first of all, in an experiment in my book, again, book 2. I feel like I'm obnoxiously plugging my books, but I don't want to bore people by retelling the story, not trying to be annoyingly promoty. And then Joe Peretta ends up getting it in this experiment together where it just had another level of meaning. Then I'm like, no one got it. No one got it. And then Kathy Nadel gets it. And then I go into a workshop, and at the Forever Family Foundation readings, I just don't take them. I don't really count usually getting readings because you guys know me. And then Connie comes out with something that none of you guys could know. And Connie got the sign. So, which just, as you know, how much that meant to me.
Right,
I basically screamed. And
I know, and then I screamed. I was like, oh my God.
And I just started crying. And normally, so it's it just ended up having so much more meaning because if I had gotten it early, none of those things would have happened. And Connie, you probably wouldn't have been able to give me a meaningful reading. Now it's hard for me to get meaningful readings at Forever Family because you guys know me too well.
Right.
And
yeah.
So it's sometimes I have come to think if you don't get a sign early, there can be a really powerful reason.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going on an hour. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I had, or?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm grateful for the time that you gave me today, and I just hope that people know and that their loved ones are always with them. That's my mission while I'm here for the rest of my years here, because I love to convince the skeptics, so that's what I'm going to keep on doing in as many venues as I possibly can to reach as many people as I can. So that's what I was put here to do, and now I'm living that life of doing that. So I'm grateful that I was finally able to move through my soul levels to get to where I needed to be to do the work that I'm supposed to be doing. So I feel very blessed to do that.
Well, thank you. And I will say, with your goal to convince skeptics, as a skeptic, you definitely keep convincing me. You're so evidential. And, I like the evidence, obviously, as everyone knows. And so then lastly, where can our listeners find you? Remind them the name of your book, where they can get it, where they can book readings, all of that.
Yep. So my website is www.meaningfulmessages.info. You can reach me at Psychic Connie, Psychic Medium. I can't even remember my email. It's Connie Psychic Medium at Gmail. And my book is called You Are So Beautiful, A Unique Perspective into the Soul's Quest for Its Destiny. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, so many different platforms in 15 different countries as well. So it's really available anywhere, both in paperback and ebook.
And is audiobook coming soon, or?
Well, that's need to work on that.
Takes forever. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Connie.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate your time.
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was zero chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF Just Happened.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_, or email me at hello@WTFjusthappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?